sa esha lokan atichandha vego vikarshasi tvam khalu kalayanaha bhutani bhutair anumeya tattvo घनावलिर्वायुर इवा विषयः स एष लोकान् अतिचण्डवेगो विकर्षसि त्वं खलु कालयानः भूतानि भूतैर अनुमेय तत्वो घनावलिर्वायुर इवा विषयः स एष लोकानतिचण्डवेगो विकर्षसि त्वं खलु कालयानः भूतानि भूतैर अनुमेय तत्वो घनावलिर्वायुर इवा विषयः Eshaha, this, Lokan, all the planetary systems, Ati, very much, Chandavegaha, the great force, Vikarshasi, destroys, Tvam, your lordship, Khalu, however, Kala Yanaha, in due course of time, Bhutani, all living entities. Bhutaihi, by other living entities. Anumeya tattvaha, the absolute truth can be guessed. Ghana avalihi, the clouds. Vayuhu, air. Iva, like. Avishahyaha, unbearable. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. My dear Lord, your absolute authority cannot be directly experienced. But one can guess by seeing the activities of the world that everything is being destroyed in due course of time. The force of time is very strong, and everything is being destroyed by something else. Just as one animal is being eaten by another animal, time scatters everything, exactly as the wind scatters clouds in the sky. Purport. The process of destruction is going on according to the law of nature. Nothing within this material world can be permanent. Although scientists, philosophers, workers, and everyone else are trying to make things permanent. One foolish scientist recently declared that eventually life will be made permanent through science. Some so-called scientists are also trying to manufacture living entities within the laboratory. Thus, in one way or another, everyone is busy denying the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and rejecting the supreme authority of the Lord. However, the Lord is so powerful that He destroys everything in the form of death. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Mrityu sarva haraschaham, I am all devouring death. The Lord is just like death to the atheists, for he takes away everything they accumulate in the material world. Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlada, always denied the existence of the Lord, and he tried to kill his 5-year-old boy due to the boy's unflinching faith in God. However, in due course of time, the Lord appeared as Nrsinghadeva and killed Hiranyakashipu in the presence of his son. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1:13-47, this killing process is natural. Jivo jivasya jivanam. One animal is food for another animal. A frog is eaten by a snake. A snake is eaten by a mongoose, and the mongoose is eaten by another animal. In this way, the process of destruction goes on by the supreme will of the Lord. Although we do not see the hand of the Supreme Lord directly, we can feel the presence of that hand through the Lord's presence of destruction. Process of destruction. We can see the clouds scattered by the wind, although we cannot see how this is being done because it is not possible to see the wind. Similarly, although we do not directly see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can see that He controls the process of destruction. The destructive process is going on fiercely under the control of the Lord, but the atheists cannot see it.
The reality of the Supreme Lord can be understood how? By everything. Everything that we see points to the reality of the Supreme Lord. Here in particular, the destructive influence or the destructive impact of time is stated to be grounds for understanding the activity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But atheists don't see. They'll give all kinds of explanations, or try to give all kinds of explanations in materialistic terms. They presume the non-existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas theists presume the existence, they take it for granted, axiomatic, that there is a supreme, absolute authority. So it's a matter of attitude. There is a misconception vigorously promoted by atheists that more intelligent people don't believe in God, and more intelligent people they can understand because there's no proof anywhere. Show me God, they say. Whereas theists, they say, the atheists say, they're just sentimentalists, there's no proof. But for the theist, everything is proof of God. And for the atheist, everything is proof that there is no God. How is that? We all see the same things. We presume. You can't prove it. I can't prove, or no one can prove. If you don't want to accept it, I can't prove it to you that there is a city called Bangalore. Well, it's called Bangalore. All right, let's think of another city. Hassan. I can't prove it exists. I can't prove there's such a thing as air. Anyone here can prove there's any such thing as air? How would a scientist prove that there is air? I don't think they even bother trying, because it's just presumed that there is such a thing as air. But if you want to deny it, you can deny it. You say, prove it to me. How would you prove to someone that air does not exist? That air does exist. How would you prove it? Any suggestions? Air inside the body. You could gag someone and put a clip on their nose and say that, well, without air you'll die. And as they're dying, they can write on a piece of paper. It still doesn't prove that there's air. Because in logic, there's cause and effect. And the effect of someone dying from not breathing, you may say, well, there may be so many other reasons. And it doesn't prove that air exists. You presume that air exists, and that if you don't breathe, you'll die. But then you can say, well, it doesn't prove that air exists. Any other suggestions? How would you prove? If someone doesn't want to accept, there's no way you can prove anything. We're talking philosophy here, epistemology. What is the beginning of Cartesian epistemology, logic? Anyone know? Anyone who studied Western philosophy. And this is ABC of Western philosophy. I think, therefore I exist. Cogito ergo sum, in Latin, as he wrote in Latin. I think, therefore I exist. That's pretty good, right? The fact that you're thinking must prove that you exist. That's something you can be sure of, right? Right? That's pretty much accepted as the building block of empiricism. At least in the West. But there's a major school, or major schools of philosophy in India that say that nothing exists. Schools of Buddhism. Nothing exists. It's all just a big illusion. Well, I don't subscribe to this. But the point is that if you don't want to accept something, you can be as stubborn as an ass. Even to the point of death. The story of the scissors, the two men arguing. Is it better to cut this with scissors or a knife? One says scissors, the other says a knife, and they get into an argument, and one starts beating the other, so one runs away and comes to a river and jumps into the river to get away from the stronger man who believes in cutting with a knife, whereas he says you should cut it with scissors. But he can't swim, so as he's drowning, just before he drowns, he puts his hand up and makes a symbol as if to cut with scissors. You won't accept. That's one way of trying to convince people. Argumentum ad bacillum, that you just force people to accept what you say. You accept my argument or I'll beat you. Or kill you. It's one method of persuasion. You accept the book, which I'm holding in one hand, the holy, what's that called? Religion of peace? Or otherwise we'll make you very peaceful with a sword in the other hand. One method of preaching. It's quite effective. It's either you convert to what we believe, or Either way, you won't remain whatever you were before. So theists see the hand of God as time. He is time and destroys everything. Interestingly, this prayer is sung by Lord Shiva, who is particularly in charge of the destructive function within the material world, which is ultimately done by Krishna. But Shiva is deputed for that. But he's praying to Krishna that it is you as time who destroys. People don't see. They see, but they don't see. It's a harsh fact of life that everything will be destroyed in due course of time. You don't need to be a theist to see this. Just need to be a little philosophical. Atheists, theists, if they're philosophical, they are aware of the fact that everything will be destroyed in due course of time. Perhaps the most prominent theist in the last few decades has been Richard Dawkins, who he published his autobiography recently with a title, I believe is called A Brief Candle in the Darkness, saying that, well, time is so great and we're all there's no real meaning and it's all darkness of ignorance. I presume that's what, but his life, he thinks, is like a little candle. He's holding a little candle up in the darkness to convince people that there's no God, and that's his contribution. Why he bothers if everything's going to be destroyed anyway, I don't know. I didn't get any good answer from an atheist why they should bother to try to convince others that there's no God. What does it matter if everything's... we're just a bunch of chemicals which are going to be destroyed. In one sense, not destruction, because energy within a system is supposed to remain constant, and if you take the whole universe as a system, then it will remain constant. Of course, is that a fact? Energy within a system? There are various reactions, but it remains constant. Can you prove it? Who can prove it? Can you prove it? Can you prove anything? What are some more scientific laws? What's the most famous? E equals mc squared. I don't know. That's a tough one. I can't even begin to understand it. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Can you prove it? Can you prove that you do something and there will be an opposite reaction? Every man is mortal. Can you prove it? You never know. Someone might live forever. Might. You don't know. So it's the same thing. There might be some action for which there's not an equal and opposite reaction. Where's the end of all this? Where are we going to go with all this philosophical speculation? Nowhere. You've seen the dog chasing his own tail. Maybe scientists have investigated why a dog chases his tail. They investigate all kinds of useless things. That may be one thing. I sometimes thought it's because they have an itch in their tail and they want to bite it a little bit so that they can relieve the itch. I don't know. Maybe it's just for fun, who knows what. Animals also, they also play and have fun, especially when they're young. You see little puppies, baby elephants, they play like little boys. Maybe it's just for fun, who knows? Maybe there's some deep evolution, in the process of evolution. There may have been, whoops, we don't believe in that. Okay, try another eye. Oh, wait a minute, the scientists, they're trying to explain. But all this speculative philosophy is just like that. You go round and round in circles, and it's, for what reason no one really knows, and you never get there. You never can come to a conclusion. And even if one philosopher comes to a conclusion, and someone else will refute it or give an argument against it. There was one philosopher who, he and his followers think that they did everything. It's the end. Well, there's more than one philosopher who thinks that they brought the end of philosophy, irrefutable arguments. I'm just thinking of one, Nagarjuna. Have you heard of him? Heard of him? Who is he? Anyone know? Oh, film actor, not that one. Actually, Nagarjuna is a name for Lord Shiva. But I'm thinking of the philosopher. He is a Buddhist philosopher who's been extremely influential up to the present day, even to all the Buddhists who never heard of him. So he thought his philosophy was irrefutable. In the 20th century, there was Bertrand Russell, a Britisher, who thought, well, oh, there's more than one. There was Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was from Austria, I believe, from Austria, and he came to live in England, and he thought he'd finished off philosophy. There's nothing more to say. I've given everything. I've given the conclusion. Everything you say, it's all just some language game. Different people play different language game. And then Bertrand Russell brought out his massive theory of logic, mathematically. He worked with another British philosopher. He was a mathematician, Bertrand Russell, and then with Alfred North Whitehead, British-American philosopher. So he brought out his system of logic with mathematics, and he thought that, well, that's the end of all. There's nothing more to say. But then why should you accept mathematics anyway? Why should you accept it? What's the philosophical basis of mathematics? You presume that numbers have some meaning, but if you say 1 + 1 = 2, it has no meaning. If you say 1 apple plus 1 other apple equals 2 apples, that has some meaning. But if you just take the number, it's just symbolic of what? Anything you want to throw in there. But the number itself, it's a mental construct. It's arguable. So, where are we going with all of this? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the proper answer. Otherwise, you can go on philosophizing forever. Prasada, how does that verse begin? Prasada lesha anugrahita evahi. How does that verse begin? Atapite deva padam bhajadvayam prasada lesha anugrahita evahi janati tattvam bhagavan mahim no nachanya ekopi chirang vichinvan. The process of trying to understand the absolute reality, who is Krishna, will never come to an end unless we get a little of his mercy. Then we can understand him. Otherwise we can go on speculating forever. In the meantime, all these great philosophers, Nagarjuna died. Not the film actor, not yet. Not yet. Is he a Telugu film actor? I could guess, yeah. He didn't die yet, but he'll die, no doubt. Bertrand Russell died. Richard Dawkins is getting that way. He won't be around much longer. They're all going to die. We're all going to die. And their philosophies will be forgotten also. And then someone else in due course of time will come up with the same philosophy, because it's all the same thing over and over again. The same kind of speculative philosophies. And what is reality? Krishna. You may say, well, that's just faith. Yeah? It's faith. It's not unreasonable faith. There's blind faith and reasonable faith. But we don't say just believe. We say that faith is required. It's reasonable faith. It's reasonable to presume that behind everything we see, there is a purpose. There is an ultimate mover. It's reasonable to accept that we all want happiness, but in this material world we meet distress. That there is a place or there is a condition where there is unmitigated happiness. It's not unreasonable. You may say, prove it. Well, how are you going to prove? Because if you set standards of proof that only pertain to matter, then you're never going to be able to define spirit, because spirit, by definition, is non-material. One thing that is pretty much provable, just like we can say all men are mortal. It's not proved fully, because you never know. Someone might not die. But it's a reasonable faith to accept that all men are mortal. Or in the modern language you have to say all men and women and all the other 228 genders are mortal. It's reasonable to say that. So in the same way, it's reasonable to state that reincarnation is a fact. There's plenty of circumstantial evidence and evidence of such a type that reincarnation is perfect explanation, and you can't find any other explanation. And therefore the so-called scientists avoid it, as they avoid so many other things which don't fit within their materialistic theories. For instance, ghosts exist. Ghosts have been recognized to exist in all cultures throughout the world, throughout history, as far as we know in history. But materialistic scientists say they don't exist because they can't exist according to our laws. They don't fit within our laws of of science, therefore they can't exist. It's very bad reasoning. Now, reincarnation is a fact. How do you explain it? Materialistically, Buddhists, they also tried because they say nothing exists, so there's no Atma. But actually their arguments are really not good at all. But the best explanation is, as Krishna gives in Bhagavad-gita, which is given in the Upanishads, that there is an eternal spiritual living being who does not die, is not subject to destruction. And that goes from body to body. That explains reincarnation phenomena, of which there are so many, and not just sometimes people say, well, that's only in countries where people believe in reincarnation, but there are so many instances in the Western world also. A young boy, 5 years old, has vivid memories of being shot down as a World War II pilot. And he can describe the plane and how it works. A 5-year-old boy, from his memory. And he can remember the name of the other pilots who are with him in the plane when it was shot down. He has nightmares about it. For instance, and this was in America. So there's plenty of evidence, and we should promote that. We who are the members of Srila Prabhupada's International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we should promote, you are not the body. You're an eternal spiritual living being. You'll never be destroyed. Reincarnation is a fact. That doesn't stop atheism per se, but it does give a very strong basis for promoting the reality of the spiritual nature, which is a beginning. This is how Srila Prabhupada would begin his preaching in the Western countries, to first of all understand you're not the body, you're an eternal living being, spiritual living being. This should be promoted. Let everyone know. Reincarnation is a fact. And we have to suffer for our sinful activities. For every action, there is a reaction on the karmic level. That's why some people are born into a wonderful existence, living in a concrete pigeonhole in Bangalore, whereas other people, they just live in some little hovel in Bangalore. So you are all from the prestigious background. You have the privilege of being born into a situation where you can live in a concrete pigeonhole rather than living in some little hovel in some slum area. So that's better karma. One karma is better than another, at least from the material point of view. Anywhere in this city is hellish, whether it's the house, I guess Narayan Murthy has some big palace somewhere in Bangalore. Is it? Does anyone know? UVCT, whatever that is, I don't know. So he must live in there in fear with all his guards and everything. Means he's in fear. But it's better karma. To be rich, to be richer than someone means you have better karma. But it's all temporary. It's all going to be destroyed. The rich man of today is the beggar of tomorrow, or the animal, or the insect of tomorrow. People don't know this. We should inform them. Human life is meant for this. We got human life after many, many births. Now we should know this. It's difficult to get people to understand this because people are becoming more and more sinful and more stupid. As Kali Yuga goes on, the Kali Yuga seems to be speeding up. Here we have Atichanda Vegaha. It's stated the effect of time is very powerful force. The force of Kali Yuga is very powerful, so that people, they don't even want to think about these things. And even if you try to get them to think about it, it's as if there's something missing in their mental apparatus and they just can't begin to understand it. Some may be committedly against understanding it. There was a case of a boy who was born in a Muslim family in India, and previously he'd been in a Gupta family. Or was it? Yeah, something. No, I'm getting the cases mixed up. But anyway, the boy, it is typical reincarnation case. He said, no, actually my name is such, and I'm from a village, some remote village, some 70 kilometers away. Does anyone know the name of any village 70 kilometers from here? You won't know, unless you're from that village. And he knew, then they took him to that house and they found out he knew the names, the nicknames of all the people. A reincarnation case. And then ultimately the Muslim family is born and said, we don't believe in reincarnation. It's just, what can you do with such people? Once in London, I was speaking to someone. I was trying to give the example of the car and the driver for the body and the soul. That analogy may become outdated if we have self-driving cars. But I was trying to explain it to someone, and then he said, well, you're supposed to be spiritual people. Why do you drive in cars? Just so dull-headed. So dull. We have to try to convince people whose attention span is how long? 30 seconds? How long is a short?
30 seconds.
Now it's up to 90 seconds. That's all. So try, distribute these books, understand this knowledge, speak this knowledge. Distributing Bhagavad-gita, this science of self-realization is very important. There's a big push now for Bhagavatams, which I always used to speak on distributing Bhagavatams, but now I would ask, after a class like this, all of you should take a set of Bhagavatam. Now you all have. Does anyone not have a set of Bhagavatam in their home? Please raise your hand. If you don't have at least one set of Bhagavatam in your home, do you have a home? Are you from Bangalore? From? You're from Mumbai. So you can take a set of Bhagavatam? Not very sure. Your parents won't allow it. What kind of parents are they? Guru na sasyat, swajana na sasyat, pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat. But don't only do Bhagavatam. There are so many, we need to distribute all the books.